My name is Steve. Welcome back to my shop. Today I'm going to start a project that I have been planning for a while, and I'm going to be building a squareness comparator. I'm going to start out with this hunk of steel that I've had for quite a long time. I actually started building something else with it. If you want a complete description of what that's all about, check my Shark Bits episode number 14, where I talk extensively about this hunk of steel. I'm going to cut out a section of it that's 3 inches wide by 4 inches long. And I'll take you over to my whiteboard and show you the general layout for the base on the squareness comparator. Okay, as I mentioned before, this piece is going to be nominally 3 inches wide by 4 inches long. I'm going to cut an angle on each end. That's cosmetic for the most part, but I'm going to make that a 30-degree angle. I like the looks of that. And then from the height of it, this is the angle. And I'm going to be cutting these two sides down to 1/2 inch thick, which is represented there. And then this section will be a full 1 inch thick. And I will be milling a slot in this, which I'll explain a little bit later as to what I'm going to be doing with that. And then out of a piece of 1 inch material, I'm going to cut another 4 inch long piece that will sit on the top of that. So I'll be able to adjust my dial indicator, and we'll go into the details as we get into that. But in the words of Harold Waters, let's go to the bandsaw. Okay, the first piece that I'm going to cut is actually the top piece, and I'll show you why in a minute. Now I'm going to cut this piece, and the reason I did the short piece first is I'm going to 1 inch thick, and I'm going to put that in the end of the vise just to keep the jaw parallel. I'm going to cut this just a little bit oversized, and then I'm going to mill it to final size. Not sure how straight this blade's going to cut, so I'm going to give myself a little extra. Here are my two major pieces. So I'm going to go over to the milling machine and square it up on the edges first before I start to do any major cutting. And this piece will mount on the top there when we get to it. So let's go over to the milling machine. Now, the block is reasonably square other than the edge that I just cut. This end here is a little high. So I'm going to touch down on it and surface it. A reasonably good finish on that. I'm just going to take about another 5/1000ths cut just to give myself a nice finish. You'll notice there's a notch in the side of it, but that will be milled out. It's only about a 1/2 inch deep, and that will end up being milled out when I cut the step in this piece. Going with a nominal size of 3 inches on this, and I'm measuring 3 inches and 32/1000ths right now, so I'll take a 25/1000ths cut and then a final finishing pass on it. Okay, I'm about 5 thousandths under 3 inches, which is just fine. So it's just a nominal size. And the edges are parallel to each other. So now I'm going to set up and square it up by cutting the other two sides. Bring you back when I'm finished setting up. Yeah, I've got my block set up. I'll use my precision square. Okay, got it squared up in the vise. I'll take just a light cut off of that and flip it over and do the other side. Looks good. Just take and flip it over now and do the other edge. I'm pretty happy with that. Now let's take it over to the surface plate and lay it out. I use some layout dye on this one since it's a larger surface. Okay, I'm going to let that dry for a few minutes and we'll go over and put it on the surface plate. Okay, I want the top piece of this to be 1 inch wide, and when I finished milling this off, it ended up being about 5 thousandths undersize. So I set my gauge so that I'm going to be scribing it at approximately 998 thousandths. So that should leave me with a 1 inch top landing. Let's measure that. Yeah, so that gives me a 1 inch on the top. What I'll be doing is I'll be milling these surfaces down by a 1/2 inch. And now what I want to do is to mark off my 30-degree angle. So I've set up my protractor here to 30 degrees. I'm taking the tip of it down to the 1 inch mark, and I'm going to use my Randy Richards scribe and scribe that 30-degree line there. Let's try it on this side. I'm not sure whether you can see those lines or not, but that will be the shape. I'll cut those corners off and mill this down. So back to the milling machine. I've got the milling machine set up with a 3/4 inch roughing end mill, so I'm going to rough this out, and then I'll put a finishing end mill in to finish it off. Then when I take it out, yeah, that's what I'm going to do. getting a very good finish with this, and since I'm going to be grinding it anyway, I'm going to leave myself a 5/1000 grinding allowance. So this should be my last depth cut pass on it. Okay, I've got my depth right where I want it. And now I'm going to do the other side. And I've got my DRO set up. I can go over and use that to work towards my center line. And I'll be leaving my the grinding allowance on the width of that also. I've got it all roughed out now. I'm going to take it out of the vise and deburr it and then set it up to cut my 30-degree angles. So there's the roughed out piece. I had originally marked my 30-degree angles, of course, on the top here, which I milled away. And I decided that I'd rather just cut the 30s on the half-inch material than I would on the full 1-inch thick material. So I think that I'm going to be able to set that up all right. This angle is not critical. It's really more cosmetic than anything. What I did is I took my adjustable parallel and I've got my 30-degree line scribed, and I'm just going to tap this until it's perfectly lined up with the parallel. Okay, that's it. Let's turn it over and do the other side. Okay, I've got the main body all roughed out now. This piece is going to sit on top of that, and it's going to be drilled. I'll have probably 4 holes in it for the Noga arm that's going to hold the dial indicator. And since I don't want to cut the mounting stud off on the dial indicator, it's actually longer than the thickness of that material, so I'm going to slot this piece here so that regardless of where I run it, it will go all the way down. And then what I'm going to do, I'm going to be cutting a slot in the front of this for a piece of hardened steel cut to a radius that will be the standard that goes against the item that you're checking the squareness on. I'll cut a radius on that, so that I'll use a piece of hardened tool steel in that. And then what I'm going to do, I'm going to put a flexure on the front here and put an adjusting screw on the rear. I'm stealing this idea from Steve Barton from Solid Rock Machine. So I'll be able to raise and lower this to adjust the dial indicator. So the next machining operation, I'm going to get this machined up, I'm going to get it drilled, and then I'm going to cut the slot in here.